I want to talk to you about restorative justice, a surprising approach that might offer better outcomes for victims, offenders, and the communities they live in. And I want to suggest that in order for it to work, we all have to do our part. Now, restorative justice is not a new idea. Some people say it's the most common approach to justice across the world and throughout time, but that somewhere along the way, we forgot how to do it. It's a philosophy that says getting justice means repairing harm. In restorative justice, repairing harm happens through face-to-face dialogues between the people harmed and the people responsible. For instance, here in Colorado, hundreds of cases are diverted from the courts each year through restorative conferences that bring together victims, offenders, and affected community members to agree on how to repair harms after a property crime or an assault.
I spent 21 years, 7 months, and 29 days in prison for a crime I did not commit. I'm used to the system feeling me because I'm used to the systems feeling my people. Now the black exonerate is parallel to the experience of like the one slave. You can be taken from a land and put into bondage. It's the same to me as being taken from your community and put in bondage because of the color of your skin. Get involved in correcting the injustice.
Hey there, welcome everyone. My name is Lulu Cameron. You are watching the second season, second episode of Second Chances. I am the founder of South Carolina for Restorative Justice. I'm also a justice consultant, and I work with people all across the country, not only in the state of South Carolina, lifting up the voices of the currently incarcerated, as well as the family members of those who are impacted by loved ones' incarcerations, and I also work with victims. So today we will have an amazing story of trial and triumph through the incarceration process. We have Marsha King with us today, and of course, my lovely co-host, McKinney Marsden. Everyone is looking so beautiful tonight. It's so nice to see y'all.
Welcome to our show again. My name is McKinney Marsden. I am the CEO of Bittersweet LLC, which is a consulting company for nonprofit organizations and small businesses. So coming home from prison is not all about freedom bells and family welcoming you home after years of incarceration with a big party. Due to many different roadblocks created during incarceration, returning citizens face major challenges that many people in positions of power fail to address. So tonight, we unpack these problems with Marsha King, who is the founder of 13th Liberation Village. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you all for having me here. I'm so glad to be here. I always enjoy being with you ladies, so I feel right at home.
Yes, we're so happy to have you. So, first of all, I'm all about giving people their accolades.
Oh,
Marsha, you are doing some amazing things, and I'm really, really proud of all the obstacles that you've overcome since I've met you. And I like to consider you a friend at this point of the game, a sister.
Yes.
But, a lot of times as women, I think that we don't recognize enough when people need us to just support them.
Yes.
We don't need them to always, what is that word? When you kind of exploit people and their experiences. And so I wanted to really make sure that you were in a place of strength and that we could offer you that prior to, because you've been doing some amazing work, not only for yourself, but for a lot of women returning home. I'm always seeing you in support of other people in their circumstances and just trying to make a way, because you know what that's like. So we're happy to hear from you. I'm proud of everything that you're doing for other people, but most importantly, I'm proud of what I'm seeing from you as a mother and as a friend.
Thank you, Lulu.
That's beautiful.
Um, it's funny that you say that. Uh, McKinney was saying that when we come home from prison, that it's not all wheels and bells. I remember just like yesterday when I had gotten the news that my compassionate release had been granted. Um, I didn't get immediate release like everyone else. My judge had put in an order to be released no later than June 30th, because that was when I was supposed to be released under the CARES Act as well. So I was so mad. And I remember one of the ladies in my unit came to me and she said, I know that this may seem like the worst thing in the world because you want immediate release. But she was like, when you get out, it's going to be so different that you really want to take this time that you have, which I think was like less than 2 weeks. She was like, you want to take these last 2 weeks that you have to really just focus on you and get a plan. And in my mind, I was like, no, I'm just ready to get out. And her advice really, really stuck with me once those first few days of being released, the excitement actually had gone away, and the anxiety and the reality of what real transition is about when you get out of prison and you're transitioning back to society. I was gone for 5 years. I thought that once I was released that I would be on top of the world, that everything was just going to be great. I was back with my family. I was back with my daughter, and prison was behind me, but it was just the opposite. I remember day 3, anxiety had just really stepped in, and I realized that things had changed, that relationships with certain family members had changed, and that I had to really step up and take full responsibility, not only for myself, but for my daughter as well. So, in doing that and trying to get back to being a mother after being gone for 5 years, the person that had my daughter in some ways felt that, okay, now you're kind of coming in, stepping on our feet, what we already had established. So, you're trying to maintain that relationship because you're forever grateful for the people that supported you and have taken care of your child, but you're also trying to go in and establish being a parent and your child recognizing you as that parent. So that within itself created a whole new situation that I thought that I would never experience. So it was more or less to end up being a period of bereavement, of grieving losing relationships as a result of the change that I experienced during incarceration, and wanted to come out to being a mother and having my own life. So those are things as well that people never really touch on. And I believe a little bit after we met, when I did a podcast actually with Plus on the first step back, I met Lulu, and I had shared with her because she was a big supporter of me. She was like, I really want people to know about you. And she was just that person that said, you know what? You have a lot going on, because I was trying to get custody of my daughter. And she said, you might need to pause and just really focus on yourself and focus on your daughter. And that's okay. So I was able to take that time because I was fighting for custody, and I was also grieving for a very close relationship with a family member that I did not want to break that bond with, but I had to if I wanted to get my daughter back.
That's tough. So,
Wow.
what
Go ahead.
support factors what support factors didn't you receive? upon coming home that you were probably expecting?
When I first came home, and I'm just going to be real candid with you all, I had strong relationships um, with, I had created my own circle of just me and this one family member and my daughter. Because when you're in prison, you have that idea of what you consider support.
Yeah.
And we sometimes forget that life goes on out here. So then we take on that attitude that, oh, okay, since life went on for you and you're not supporting me the way that I want, you cut everybody off. So when I
Right.
came home, I'm thinking that I cut people off that didn't want to be there. But then I came to realize that people were there the best way that they can. So then I had limited my own support unknowingly. So I was in the midst of having those family members reach out, and my mind was said that, oh, you wasn't a support anyway. So as a result of not having that immediate support, I kind of found myself alone, because you have people around you that they think that things are a certain way because of what they see on social media, but they have no idea of what's really going on in your life. So I really found myself lonely and no one to confide in, because you have people that are being supportive of the people that they think were supportive of you without knowing the entire story. So
Right.
I was in a place where I was alone, but I was still trying to keep my head up because I had people that were also dependent on me that I was advocating for. When I first came home, I was advocating with someone for a person that was incarcerated in Norfolk. Okay. So I had to show face too.
Yeah.
All right. Even though I was lonely, I had to show face that everything was okay and I was moving along in life, but I
Yeah.
was really by myself.
Yeah. So that's a big thing that I see a lot of people face, just returning home. Um, because what I'm noticing is that a lot of people are like, oh, they get out and they're acting like they're doing really well, but that's not really true.
Oh,
And for me, being a person who has endured a lot of life struggle, right? I know what it looks like. I know what it looks like to be in a struggle, but you not look like your struggle, right? And so
right.
I can easily recognize it in other people. And initially, I was only noticing it in the men that were, excuse me, the men that were coming home, and so I wasn't seeing it so much in the women. And so that's when I kind of was like, when I saw you, I could feel your pain. You know what I mean? Like, because I love my daughter, and anyone who knows, we have a very good relationship. And so I want that for everyone. And then just thinking about what it could be like. And so I know too that a lot of people on the inside have really high expectations of people who have gotten out, and now they're home, and they have this expectation like you're supposed to come back and pull us all, and that's not always realistic, and that's not fair. And so
Right.
what I noticed is that you were willing to do whatever you thought was what was expected of you. But me understanding that people sometimes just need a friend, and they need a sister, or they need somebody looking out for their best interest. I'm like, hey, I appreciate, because when I saw you and I met you and we talking online, there was a senator on the episode that we met on, and I was like, oh, Marsha, you know what I mean? Like, I'm loving everything that I'm hearing, the way that you break things down, the way that you advocate for those who are left behind. But what people also have to realize is that it's a huge task in front of a person to come
Right.
out from behind the wall and try to kind of put life together, especially when like you said, what you thought or considered was what is that word? What you thought or considered was, family and support. It doesn't look like that when you get out. A lot of people have this idea that there's going to be this big family camaraderie surrounding them, helping them to come to the next side. And what I'm finding more oftentimes than none is this: that's all talk.
Exactly.
And I'm not trying to say this to call anybody's families out, because I'm not formally incarcerated, but even in my own walk, in my own business, people, they say they support you, but they support you from the way back, right? And so it's really hard when you're trying to put yourself together, and here you are, thinking we got a certain amount of pride, right? Like, okay, I'm free now, I shouldn't be complaining, I shouldn't be having all these hardships and the things that you're facing. But what people need to understand is that there are people who really need that support. And so everyone doesn't have it. So I just, again, I feel like there's some things that could be happening more so like from the inside, right? Just the way that visitation is run, the way that it is discouraged for family members, especially in the women's institutions. They don't even really have visitation. You always hear about how the men's visitation rooms are packed and the women's visitation rooms are typically empty. And I think that there has to be some form of family reunification that's taking place before a person, is leaving the system, to kind of help the families and this person prepare. Because otherwise it's like a stranger you haven't seen in some years. Now, you can talk to a person all day, right? But it's still a little bit different. But so can you tell me, like,
I think this is what the issue is.
Go ahead.
It's not that the family is not supportive. When you're in prison, time stops.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no more time, because all you have is count time and child time. So we don't have any real responsibilities. Okay. That's all a thing of the past until you are released from incarceration. So the outside, they're growing, they're maturing, they're doing a lot of great things in life, and the person in prison is doing time, just doing whatever they have to do to get through the day. When I went to prison, I was 36 years old. When I got out, I was 36 years old. The only thing that helped me is at 36, you're at a certain level of maturity. But when you have 18 and 19-year-olds that are going into prison as a juvenile, they're coming out still with the mentality of an 18 and 19-year-old, but they So when they get out, they're still stuck at the period that they were when they were first released. Okay, that's where I was. I was still stuck back in 2014, 2015, but it was 2020. So there were certain conversations and things that had happened in 2014 and 15 that I was still at, whereas there's a big gap between 15 and 20 that I have no knowledge of, that the people on the outside are going through mentally and emotionally. We can't identify with that because people that are formerly affected are going through their own mental and emotional issues on dealing with being in a controlled environment. We're not able to control anything. If they say lockdown is lockdown, you can cry and complain about it and you can write a grievance, but that's all that you can do. Whereas out here, then you can get up and go anytime you want to get up and go. So in prison, you get your mind fixed on, okay, this is how I'm going to do my time, so the time doesn't do me, which is why most people that get out look so useful, because either you're going to be able to spend time and meditate and not worry about what's going on outside or what you can't control. So when you get out, you have that same mentality. And I'm not of the same mind as far as take care of this, so everything is a sense of urgency, whereas to you it may be. So there's a communication problem. Whereas you're the person or your family And I say with the exception, and I'm just biased with mothers, because I think that mothers, they're going to understand anyway, because they had you and they're going to accept you as you are. So I say anybody other than mothers, significant others, even siblings, when you get out and talk, oh, you're different, then you tend to be able to identify with people that have been formerly affected, such as you. So you can have a conversation with them, whereas it may be a bit of a struggle with people that your family or your sister or your brother. So then that causes an issue. Like, okay, why can you have a conversation with them, but you can't have a conversation with me? Those was one of the things that I battled with. And I found my peace in talking to my mom. You know, I hadn't seen my mom in 5 years. Okay. And then we had a family member to pass, and my mom called and said, come home. So I hadn't been home since 2014. So when she said come home in 2021, I came home, and her and I were able to sit down, and I was able to speak and tell her, this is how I felt in prison, and this is how I feel now. And that, I felt like that was the only person that understood was my mom. So that's where my healing started. And that was the person that was able to give me the push to finding some type of peace, and then even getting into mental health counseling. I did mental health counseling for 13 months. And that was also very instrumental in getting myself whereas I needed to be, because I was so used to lockdown, I was still locking down. Close to.
That's not funny. That's not funny at all. But you know,
I'm just saying. I'm not laughing like funny.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
It was just that's really, because people look at me and say, I can't. She did time, yes. And when I came home, I was still closing and locking that door every day, all day, still taking showers, all the things that you did while still incarcerated. And it took me really 2023 to come outside of even being an advocate. Be an advocate, but you're no longer incarcerated anymore. Okay. Yeah. So you have to start talking about restorative justice, which one of the main things of restorative justice is reunification of the family.
Yes.
Okay. No real parent or mother or father that has been affected, that come out, does not want to have their child back. Okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes people have the best intentions when you ask them to take care of your children until you're released, and they say, you're not going to have to worry about anything. I'm going to make sure that your child see you. You can call her anytime. You can make decisions, because I did all of that. I saw Isabella. Those promises were kept. I saw Isabella visitation. I saw her almost every day on video visits. Okay. I remember telling her I'm going to call her Cupcake. She was like, no, my name is not Cupcake. It's Princess. I said, well, I'm going to call you Cupcake, and everybody else can call you Princess. We had those calls. I remember many times getting off videos crying because she didn't want to sit there for the whole 25 minutes. And I would have some of the women say, you have to understand, she's just a little child, so she's not going to be able to sit there. But I was still set that she's going to know that I'm her mother. So I began to write her letters to let her know how I felt while I was incarcerated. Send her Hello Kitties, cartoons, whatever it is I had to do to keep that connection. Call in the morning, the first day of school. I even made decisions. So when I came home and did the same thing, I didn't think it would be an issue, but it became an issue because her life was already set up with whom she was with. So it was like I was coming in imposing, because I was like, I appreciate everything, but I got it now. I'm here. I'm going to take 100% care of her or whatever. We'll go through counsel, whatever it is that you want to do. And hey, after a year, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move to another state so we can start our life. And whereas I thought that it'd be okay, wasn't okay. All right.
So,
it was like, no.
So when you say it wasn't okay for you, or it wasn't okay for Isabella. I
It
mean,
was it is about when I first got out, the first time that they opened up the van to let me out of federal prison, Isabella was right there. She grabbed hold of me and never let go. So it was never a problem as far as her and I connected. It was a problem because she was also connected as more than
to
just
the
what she
person.
was to who she was with. It was
Mhm.
almost as if she was their child and not mine.
And you was just
Mhm.
the auntie. Yeah.
So that's what became the issue. So it was kind of like, no, we've done this the whole 5 years, and you're just not going to come in and just changed everything. And then we went through counseling, and the counselor was like, what's best is help to transition back to her mother because that's always been the plan. And after a while, the other part was like, no. So when I filed
Mhm.
everything in court, it was contested. And that's when the custody issue began.
Wow. So that's
Excellent.
that's really heartbreaking. I go ahead, McKinney. Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I understand to a level of what it is that you went through and why it was so conflicting coming home. Because here it is, the child has already been accustomed to a certain routine and
Right,
just being in the presence of a home where, this is my whoever it was, and having to reassimilate themselves into a different routine with you. And there's so much time and space in between from when you were incarcerated to when you were released. So it's like you have to figure out a way to heal those wounds and relearn each other.
right,
And when there's such a big age gap between you and your child, depending on how old they are, that can be a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
Because if they were older, then they would be able to reason a little bit better and be like, okay,
right.
well, I understand that. So here's how we can move forward and, help the transition. But when they're still a child and a minor, that's like, it's like you're pulling away your heart. You're literally pulling your heart apart.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
you as a parent now have to take a step back to be like, you know what? I'm gonna have to allow you to do what you are used to, what you're comfortable with, and so there's no conflict. Because any way you look at it from your perspective, you're always gonna look like the person that's trying to come in and shake things up, and that's not what it is.
Right.
You're
So,
absolutely right, McKinney.
and it's like that's a lot of that's the issue that a lot of people, parents who are incarcerated, are faced with, because incarceration puts such a huge wall. It's like an invisible wall that goes up
Yes,
between you and your family. They have their perception of what they think is going on. You have your reality of what's going on. And then there's the words in between that's supposed to fill all the gaps in to help you guys understand, but nobody understands it unless they're actually in
right.
that situation.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
get it. I get it.
And I
So,
think that it's really no easy. I'm not gonna say it's not an easy way because it is. I've seen people come home and actually be able to separate their feelings and what's best. Because sometimes it's not always best. Whereas some parents don't want to take the full custody or not willing to do what they want to do. And not by any means that I come on and say, tomorrow we leaving. It was a process, but sometimes it doesn't depend. It doesn't matter how long the process. It's somebody's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes down to making realistic decisions prior to
yeah.
incarceration to make sure that not only are you protected, but your child is protected.
Hmm.
Because you can enter into an agreement with someone, with the court, and a person can say, don't worry about it. When you get home, I know what the judge said, but this is what I'm going to do. But that agreement can be binding, and it can be hard to get out of. And sometimes people that's outside of the parent, or other than the father or the mothers, like aunts and uncles, they can be recognized as, once that agreement is made in the court, as if they have the same rights as the parent. And it's hard sometimes to dissolve those issues if that party is not willing. And as a result, the child begins to suffer because children start recognize that they have two people here that they love, that they have to make a choice that they don't want to make.
Yeah.
And so that makes it harder on the child. And though that effect is sometimes an effect that may never go away in the future, because they may feel like in between that they actually end up hurting someone. So that's why before going to prison, you have to look at more than just this is this person. Look at how this person has made decisions and other things. I tell everybody that I even deal with now, especially some of the men that are not married, I'll be like, look, trust your mama. If they're not married, I'll be like, trust your mama, because mama is not going to change. Okay. 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Others have a way of being able to separate what they want and what's best when they know that their child is going to do the right thing by their child. Not all mothers.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So some mothers are the reason why people are incarcerated. So,
right, not all of them, but for the most part, some. So I always advise people, as far as reunification that's facing incarceration, see what kind of agreements that your state actually offers, because you have some states that you could just make an agreement, okay, and file it with the circuit court, and then once you're released from prison, then there's an exchange of custody of the child once you're settled, and you don't have to go to court and have a actual joint custody or full custody. Now, joint custody and primary physical custody, all of that changes the whole game, because now that person is like a parent. So unless they willingly terminate their rights, then you're stuck in a permanent agreement, as if you're all parents until that child turns 18, unless they choose to terminate their rights. And so if everybody's not getting along, you got a problem.
Yeah. What would you say are some things that, like, if you, in a perfect world, right, if you could implement a process that will work more streamlined for families, mothers and fathers returning home who have children that they love and care for and want to continue to be a major player in their child's life, what would you say is something that needs to be done, like in your circumstance and in the circumstance of others? Like, yeah, I get it. Let's look at what the state does. But like in the perfect world, like if we could make a recommendation to the state, what would that look like?
See, that's the thing. Most of the states already are really have laws that are in place for parental rights. Just because you go to prison, there are really no laws that terminate your parental rights in some states unless you're doing a sentence for a violent crime. Most states are for the parents, whether you're incarcerated or not. The problem is lack of knowledge and lack of information or education. Some people just don't know that you can contact social services and they'll make sure that you actually maintain some type of connection. I ended up meeting a social worker, King, and him and I did a podcast together, and he was did social work, and he began to give me all this education about how making sure that you keep in contact with your child by writing letters. That is what keep your rights from being terminated. So there's really no because that's the same thing. I was like, I want to get some laws passed for this because this is ridiculous. And I did research, and there's already laws. The laws are on our side. It's just that we don't know that the laws are on our side because we label ourselves and characterize ourselves as a bad person because we went to prison. So the judge is going to see us as a bad person. See, I didn't care what the judge said. I was like, I'm my mama. And I have always maintained being her mother. So I didn't have a problem letting the judge know that, okay, I have an issue with this. So when he didn't listen, I did my own research and I would file my own motions to the courts. So there's really no process that's really needed in most states because the laws are there, the federal and state laws are already there because the United States Supreme Court passed a law, I think it was in 1999 or 2000, Traxler, that said that each state can set their own specific standards to make sure that parents are able to maintain their rights. And they're all for the parents. So we have to then, the next step is educate yourself with those laws within your state if you're serious about maintaining a relationship with your child, whether you're on good or bad terms, it doesn't matter. Still educate yourself so you're protecting your relationship with your child. So even if it's a problem, because things will get mended after a while, once the dust clears. But what doesn't get mended is if you make your child feel abandoned, because in their mind, they feel like you got out and you didn't come back for me.
Yeah.
Okay? So
that's a big thing. And a lot of people, a lot of young people or children of incarcerated parents feel abandoned regardless if the parent tried to be there.
Right.
And so I think that when we consider what's important as far as family is concerned, for those who have just mothers, fathers, grandmothers, aunties, uncles that they're returning to, or if they actually have children that they birthed that they're trying to kind of like reacquaint themselves with, it's just like it's almost like an emotional like stigma that's attached to all of this. So it's easy for us to say, educate yourself, right? A lot of people, I tell people that all the time, you need to be educating yourself on what happens. I talk to people for a year or two, longer than, a little bit longer than a year before they get out, trying to help prepare them mentally for what's about to happen. And the sad part is that you can lead a fish to water, a horse, whatever you want to call it, but you can't make them drink. And when everything is compounding on top of you at one time, it's hard for people to find themselves on the right side of this thing, as far as it relates to their families, as far as it relates to their children, as far as it relates to their reentry back into society. And so if there's anything that we can, basically impart upon people to try to basically understand and start having conversations with their loved ones, if you're not someone who's currently incarcerated or someone who's formerly incarcerated, is really get honed into the things that are important to you. Right. Because a lot of times I see people so concerned with the outfits they're going to have when they get out of prison, what kind of car they're going to drive when they get out of prison, what their plans are. They have all these plans, but they fail to really put a plan in place for their families and for their children. And what it hurts my heart, because I see so many people in this circumstance where they're stuck and they can't get their children back because the child has grown up 17 years with someone and they're like, hey, let this thing go. We've been doing 17 years with this child. There's no need to disrupt them. And people have not emotionally wrapped themselves around the fact that maybe that person is right? Maybe it's in the best interest for the child to stay with what they know and for us to continue to build and rebuild our relationship. And so that's not everybody's story, but that is some people's story, because it's hard enough out here. Hell, it's hard enough for me, trying to live on the straight and narrow path, working a job, paying my bills on time. And then I don't even have the courts in my business.
Right.
So then you come out of prison and now somebody's fighting you for your child and they want you to have a 3-bedroom, or they want you to have X, Y, and Z in order to make it happen. And sometimes those expectations are not realistic. I've seen with the requirements of men to get their, have even visitation with their children is that they live in X, Y, and Z place. And based upon the way the times are turning, people really have to be purposeful in what's important to them in order for things to happen, because they won't just happen just because that's the nature of law, right? That's the normal process of things. This is my baby, I birthed it, I had him or her, and now I want them back, and it doesn't work like that. And so I really think that people, whether it's your mama or whomever, you need to start putting a plan in place of what this actually looks like. And I say this, and it's, your story is as it relates to children, but it's also important as it relates to just your everyday family. A lot of people have done a lot of time, and whether or not you come from a family, I have some people in my family that are incarcerated, and I have family members that say, oh, I'll holler at them when they get out. Before I was connected to prison, I was the same way. Oh, brother, don't call me. Call somebody else. I'm not going to send you a book. I'm not going to put money on your books when all you had to do was do the right thing, and I get it now. Right? So shame on me for thinking like that, but that was before I knew, right?
Right.
If I knew then, what I know now is that people's success is based on
their support,
the support that they have.
That's
right? And so if you want to see your loved one get out of prison and do better, you have to engage with that person.
Yes.
I know family members who don't want people talking to people because they're in prison. Oh, no, we're not going to associate ourselves with people who are in prison.
Right.
Why? That's your family. You know what I mean? Like, if you love that person the way that you say you do, it shouldn't be a roadblock between how you're able to love someone. And so my biggest pull is that on the other side of this thing, I see people get out of prison and fail miserably every single day. I see people get out of prison and kill themselves because they're lonely. And so they've resorted to things that are not advantageous to their future life or their current life because they're gone. And I see family members who died to, who are just dying to be with people who have gotten out of prison. But this man or woman has sat up in prison for 24 years and you ain't never bust a grape. You have never sent a card. You've never come to visit. You've never been a part of that person's life. And so they've had to figure out how to do life without your family, right? And so a lot of people got a little chip on their shoulder. Like, I don't know them people. Them people ain't never did nothing for me. And that's, that's between a rock and a hard spot. And then on the flip side, when they get out and, they're doing what they're doing and they're not coming around to the family, now the family thinks that they're acting funny. And I think it's just, we all perish in circumstances in which we don't understand, right? So when we choose not to understand the negative impacts of incarceration in the United States of America, we choose to allow our family members to walk into a dark tunnel. And who knows if there's light on the other side of it. It's a whole bunch of stuff in prison that's worse than the crime that many people have committed. And if we don't support people through their incarceration, if we have them, then we're only asking for them to find ways to re-incarcerate themselves. Even if you think about the Khalif Browder story, like his mama loved him.
Yeah.
They were just poor.
That comes down to the mental health.
But once you get in prison and you locked away, everybody got mental health. I don't give a damn what nobody say. Just the thought of me having a loved one incarcerated creates a mental health issue for me. The fact that you're walking around here just a sound mind, that's amazing in itself.
But that's that
was a lot of
it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yes.
You get these family members and it's like, oh yeah, so-and-so's son or so-and-so's daughter was arrested at that point. I don't know what's going on with their case. And they will never ask. They will see that person every day, their parent or whoever is directly connected with them, and they won't even ask about the person that's incarcerated. And then when they get home, it's like, oh yeah, that's great. Nice to see you. But they're not even offering any type of emotional support for you to be rehabilitated and transition back into society and their family.
Yes.
I think that to really bridge the gap, and this is what I've learned from my experience in the last almost 3 years, people cope different, okay? Yeah. And sometimes when people go to prison, it's like a death for some people that's on the outside. So they deal with it the best way that they can. Whereas people may feel like even some mothers, a mother's not all mothers, most mothers are equipped with a unconditional love that will never go away. So they know how to push through pain and hurt to still be there for their child, because we carried our child inside of us for 9 months and we endured pain to bring them to this world. Sometimes fathers and others are not like that. So it comes down to what I've learned is reasonable expectations, and really having a sense of forgiveness, that even though a person may not have responded the way that you wanted them to, maybe that's the only way they knew how to respond. So sometimes you have to be able to see, even if you don't understand or agree, you have to be able to look at things from that person's perspective. It's a lot of people that I had something that I said, I got something to say when I see them. Yeah. And when I saw them and sat down and actually had a conversation for them, I had a sense of compassion, because they were there the best way that they knew how, even if it was to send money, and I never heard from them. That was the way that they were able to cope with my incarceration. So in order for the person that's affected, they have to be able to understand that even if a person doesn't respond the way that they want them to respond, they have to just accept that, because that they are the ones incarcerated. So you can't make everyone around you respond, be on top of it, be 100 like you think or you want them to be, but be grateful for those that are, because God is going to bring someone, or whoever you believe in, there someone is going to manifest in your life to help you get through that. Or sometimes you'll get the strength to get through it yourself, and then you can offer a way to build that bridge. Okay. And that's where you find your peace. And that's when everything else starts to fall back in line with your life, because that's how people end up committing suicide and going back to prison, because they're not able to accept some of the hurt that came about, or the trauma with the incarceration, not the incarceration within itself. So that's where you offer mentorship programs. People that have been affected and have not, be able to come in and help people to understand both sides, so you're able to come together, even when it comes to bringing the children with parents. Even if there's an attachment, whether you get your children back or not, still love the child more, to do what's best. If that's putting them back with the parents, with reuniting them in their home, but some type of reunification, because the children does need to know that the parent is there. So that's what it really comes down to on every level when you're dealing with incarceration. Kind of put the ego aside and trying to find a bridge to bring everything together.
Yeah. And I definitely agree with you on that. And I will just say, because second chances. And while I believe in second chances, I'm always also here to let the United States of America know where they have fallen short. Okay. Right. Because what we cannot do is continue to stand up here and expect a person to be 100% responsible for their incarceration, 100% responsible for their rehabilitation, 100% responsible for the healing that most people have had, that most people need because of the trauma that they endured before whatever their crime was. But see, we're not looking back into a person's history. We just expect it. And Marsha, you done messed up. Now you can sit here and you can figure it out and you can get better, or you can get worse. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, in a lot of circumstances, people who have violent offenses are not afforded the rehabilitation that is afforded inside of state prisons or federal prisons. I don't know necessarily the laws and the feds, but the point of the matter is, a lot of people cannot get to the places that you're talking about because they can't even get to the places that they need to be in because they got stuff inside of them that's holding them so deeply and so tough that they need to heal, and they don't know how. And we can keep telling them to search for God, and God is going to show you the way. That is not, for a person that's really struggling, a person that really went through something, because a lot of people really went through a lot of stuff before they got to the point of incarceration. Sure, they committed crimes. Sure, they did horrible things. I'm not saying that I condone crime, but what I am saying is that we got to be looking at the whole person and what that person needs. And so as we continue to have conversations surrounding the family and how important the family is, because we do know that the family is important, whether it's your God-given family or if it's the family that you've decided to choose. We have got to find ways that we can heal ourselves, and people need to be afforded the proper services. These prisons need to stop double dipping on taxpayers' dollars. Okay. You're taking the money for people to be incarcerated and you ain't doing jack diddly squat with them. They might know how to paint a car or make a little piece of wood or something when they get out, but you haven't provided with them with the emotional intelligence to be different, to shift the mindset that put them in prison in the first place in a lot of cases. And so the problem that I have is that people are hurting. Even as I'm sitting here, I'm reading someone's comment that says, I've been out 5.5 years and I'm still having a hard time finding a way to maneuver because actually my mind is sometimes still incarcerated to a point. And so this is a real thing. This is a real issue. But the problem that I see, I'm all about ownership, right? But I can only own so much shit because trust me, people be putting stuff on me and they want me to be the big girl all the time. And baby, for the most part, I am. But I'm human, right? And I haven't, and people look at those who are incarcerated like God's scum of the earth. We've all fallen short of the glory at some point in time. If you just ran through the little white lines at the stoplight, don't play with me. You almost killed somebody. Don't trip. You know what I mean? Like you done walked out the store when you were younger with some now and laters and whatever. You done stole some stuff in your life. People have done some things that they just don't want to talk about. And where my heart goes out to the incarcerated is because majority, and not all, but majority of the incarcerated are wearing their crimes on a day-to-day basis because they're constantly reminded of what they did to put them in this circumstance. And so I can respect a mofo that can't own the things that they've done as opposed to a person who's sitting high and looking low and they act like they have never done anything wrong.
Right.
And that goes to the legislators that's sitting on the South Carolina legislation that's charging folks $3,500 for a 15-minute phone call. We see you. That's bad. You know what I'm saying? Those are things. And so that's what I'm saying to everybody. There needs to be some type of emotional intelligence, trauma-informed healing that's in place for everyone so people can level set, so people can find themselves, so they can get to the place where they can just be like, you know what, my Uncle Buddy ain't never come to see me, even though I lived with him my whole life, and now I've been in prison 24 years, but I still love him, and I can look past that. And there's not a lot of people who are inside of prisons that feel like that. There's a lot of people who are angry. Angry with how they got there, angry with how they continue to be treated, and angry to how they have been dismissed by their families. When all they thought they were doing was living the life that their families taught them to live.
And that's painful. That's a painful reality.
Right. But people create families in prison too.
You're right.
Okay. Because when I was in prison, there are women that I connected with that I'm still connected to this day, that I can call for anything. When I went through some of the hardest time in my life, you know who was there for me? My Fed sisters. My family, I have my mom and other people that were there for me too. And I'm not excluding them, but I'm just showing that within the walls themselves, you connect to some really awesome people. And I had these people that, they wrote the judge. They talked to the guard ad litem. They sent money to help take care of hotel fees, different things. And I ain't talking about $10 and $15. I had one Fed sister that kept sending $500 and $600 just saying, go get your baby, go get your baby. We support you and everything. So sometimes within the walls, when you don't have family, people create families, and they continue to be family even when they walk outside of prison. And some of those relationships are forever. Even some women that you've never met, just because you're connected by their experience, even on the outside, they become your family and support you through whatever. So that's something that's also, just beneficial as well. And you know what, like you said, Lulu, you too, McKinney, some things it's going to be worked out through conversation and us just really coming together to create the solution. It's just really no perfect solution because everybody is different. Every family is different. I can say within myself, I become a more humble person than I was when I first walked out. When I first walked out, I was like, oh, I ain't never talked to these people. People was calling out, what? Yeah, I ain't heard from you. What's up? It's on site. I had that mentality when I walked out. And then when I took the time to really sit down, I found out certain things could have been worked out. Just pick up the phone and asking too. Why haven't I heard from you? Some people just didn't know how to connect. So it's just depending on the situation, that's when we'll find solutions just as we go. But I still also encourage people, vote, because who you put in office, it matters as far as these laws, incarceration, how you do your incarceration programming, all those type of things. That matters too as well. When people say, I don't vote because it don't matter, it matters.
It matters.
You go to prison to see that it matters. We was waiting on Obama to set us free. Okay. And it took Trump to sign that First Step Act. And it, that dreamed out Oregon, Topeka were all pushing. Okay. But we didn't get our freedom through Obama. Respect to Obama, because he's still my favorite president. But Trump is my second favorite president because he signed the First Step Act. And 2 years later, as a result of him signing that law is still beneficial. So vote.
Yeah, and I feel you on that. And I'm glad that you are free. That's all I'm gonna say on that. But what I will tell people is that your local election matter the most, because
I just giving it real.
Listen, I feel you. I'm glad you can laugh about that thing, because girl. But
I'm sorry, y'all. Trump did it. He signed the paper.
Your local elections really do matter. And it's just a thing. We can't get all onto this political road right this second because time is up. But it was definitely a great conversation today. I'll give y'all a second to, do any closing comments. It was a pleasure to have you on today, Marsha. I miss you so much on the screen with me at the same time.
I ain't got to cry, because I can honestly say that you two ladies, some people get on and we act like we're just really good friends. Well, we are in real life a support to each other. I can say, Lulu picks up the phone and say, "What you doing, girl?" "Okay, bye. I was just checking on you."
You gotta check in.
We really in real life have those conversations.
Yeah,
and we really, all three of us are really out there doing the work, and we're all really the unsung heroes that we may not people may not know all the work that we do. Well, we're doing it because I know I was telling McKinney, I was like, yeah, I see everything that you're doing with Reform Alliance and all that stuff, and you'll just be surprised who's really out here doing the work. So I just tell people all the time, please support those that are supporting you all and that are really making a difference in the community that impacts you. Those are who you want the longevity for. So those are my last words. Support support us.
And I see that, but I'm gonna say this: I found McKinney a long time ago going ham about the work. Okay, that's why I love that girl right there.
Yes, she sure did.
I was like, so I want people to know, we are people outside of being attached to these large organizations or our own organizations. and we are committed to this work because we have a passion and a heart and an empathy for
Yes.
humanity. And that's, that's what makes the difference between us and a lot of other people. I'm not saying that there aren't other good people doing the work, but there's a lot of phony jabronis doing the work too. I call them the Get Money Crew. So you got about 30 seconds. You go right ahead, but this was
No, it's true though. So I'll just close it out and say we women need to continue to support each other. When we actually get out there in the field and we're swimming with the sharks, people aren't really supporting the way that they should. And within this little community that we have here of sisterhood, we need to just keep this going and keep supporting all the sisters that are coming out and that have a voice and have children and need to be able to put all that positive energy out there, because there's not enough of us.
Right.
Yeah.
The
We need
mothers,
to
the
pull it
aunties.
together. Yep.
Everybody. So I thank y'all for joining us again. This has been a successful episode of Second Chances, and we'll see y'all in 2 weeks. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank y'all for having me.